From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
The traditional way, if you look at President Obama and other presidents, most of them didn't make calls. A lot of them didn't make calls. I like to call when it's appropriate, when I think I'm able to do it. They have made the ultimate sacrifice.
As President Trump falsely claims his predecessors didn't call the families of fallen soldiers and has attacked the widow of a U.S. soldier killed in Niger, who says Trump told her he, quote, knew what he signed up for. Today, we spend the hour with Khizr Khan, one of the country's best-known Gold Star fathers, whose son was killed in Iraq in 2004. Khan famously spoke out against Trump at last year's Democratic National Convention.
Donald Trump, you're asking Americans to trust you with their future. Let me ask you, have you even read the United States Constitution? I will gladly lend you my copy.
Khizr Khan is the author of An American Family, a memoir of hope and sacrifice. Today, he joins us for the hour to discuss his family's struggles and sacrifice, their experience as Muslim immigrants in the United States, and more. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. In Puerto Rico, less than 10% of the island's public schools were able to resume classes Tuesday, now a month after Hurricane Maria devastated the island. Of the schools that were able to reopen, most had no electricity or internet access. On Tuesday, Congress approved a $36.5 billion emergency spending plan to fund the recovery from Hurricanes Harvey, Irma, and Maria. The spending plan gives Puerto Rico access to $4.9 billion in loans. The plan also gives billions to FEMA and the National Flood Insurance Program. Meanwhile, a tiny Montana company called Whitefish Energy has won a $300 million contract with the Puerto Rico Electric Power Authority, known as PREPA, to restore parts of Puerto Rico's devastated electrical power grid. The company is only 2 years old and had only 2 full-time employees when Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico. It's based in Whitefish, Montana, the tiny hometown of Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke. Zinke has admitted he knows the company's CEO, although Zinke claims he had no role in brokering the contract. The company, Whitefish Energy, is backed by the private equity firm HBC Investments, whose founder donated $27,000 to Trump's primary election campaign and another $20,000 to the Trump Victory PAC during the general election. At least 80% of Puerto Rico still has no electricity, and about a quarter of the island still lacks clean drinking water. There are dozens of suspected cases of leptospirosis, a potentially fatal bacterial infection caused by contact with water contaminated by animal urine. Authorities are investigating whether 4 deaths were caused by the disease. Meanwhile, in Texas, a 31-year-old man who is helping repair homes damaged by Hurricane Harvey has died after he was diagnosed with a rare flesh-eating bacterial disease. He's at least the 2nd person now in Texas to die after contracting the extremely rare disease from Hurricane Harvey's floodwaters. A sweltering heat wave is smashing temperature records across Southern California. At least 8 cities set new daily records Monday, including Long Beach, which hit 105 degrees. On Tuesday night, the professional baseball teams, the Houston Astros and Los Angeles Dodgers, faced off at the hottest World Series game ever played. It was 103 degrees at the Dodgers Stadium in Los Angeles, smashing the previous temperature record by nearly 10 degrees. The Dodgers beat the Astros 3-1. In more news on climate change, a new study by the World Bank says the amount of food destroyed by drought could feed 80 million people every day for a year. Scientists have linked increasing and worsening droughts to climate change. The United Nations reports global hunger is now on the rise after declining for the last 15 years. The UN study says 815 million people went hungry in 2016, and that the rise was primarily caused by war and climate change. change. Arizona Republican Senator Jeff Flake has announced he will not run for re-election in 2018 and condemned President Trump in a blistering speech on the Senate floor on Tuesday.
The notion that one should stay silent and as the norms and values that keep America strong are undermined, and as the alliances and agreements that ensure the stability of the entire world are routinely threatened by the level of thought that goes into 140 characters. The notion that we should say or do nothing in the face of such mercurial behavior is ahistoric, and I believe profoundly misguided. We must stop pretending that the degradation of our politics and the conduct of some in our executive branch are normal. They are not normal. Reckless, outrageous, and undignified behavior has become excused and countenanced as telling it like it is, when it is actually just reckless, outrageous, and undignified.
Tennessee Republican Senator Bob Corker also slammed President Trump Tuesday after Trump took to Twitter to disparage Corker for not supporting his tax plan, which would shower massive tax breaks onto the wealthiest Americans, including Trump himself. Trump tweeted Senator Corker, the chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, quote, couldn't get elected dog catcher in Tennessee. Corker responded by tweeting, same untruths from an utterly untruthful president, hashtag alert the daycare staff. Senator Corker also slammed Trump in an interview with reporters hours before Trump joined Senate Republicans for a lunch on Capitol Hill.
Standing up in front of the American people and stating untruths that everybody knows to be untrue, just the attempted bullying that he does, which everybody sees through, just the dividing of our country as President of the United States is something that is, I think, debasing to our country.
A protester was arrested after he threw Russian flags at President Trump and repeatedly shouted, "Trump is treason," as Trump walked into a lunch with Senate Republicans at the U.S. Capitol building Tuesday.
Trump is treason! Trump is treason! Trump is treason!
The protester, Ryan Clayton, with the group Americans Take Action, also accused President Trump of colluding with Russia to steal the 2016 presidential election. New details have emerged showing the Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee funded the research that led to the dossier alleging Trump had ties to Russia and that the Trump campaign may have colluded with the Russian government ahead of the 2016 election. The Washington Post reports a lawyer with the Clinton campaign and the DNC contracted a Washington, D.C.-based firm, which went on to hire former British intelligence agent Christopher Steele to investigate and prepare the dossier. Senators have drafted legislation that would impose new terms on the landmark 2015 nuclear deal with Iran, following President Trump's refusal to certify Iran's compliance with the deal. The legislation is being drafted by Republican Senators Bob Corker and Tom Cotton with the backing of the Trump administration. Opponents say the legislation could violate the international agreement. Reuters reports it would impose new terms related to trade and aviation and would instantly reimpose sanctions if Iran were deemed capable of developing a nuclear weapon within 1 year. Senate Republicans voted down a rule that would have made it easier for Americans to sue banks and credit card companies. Vice President Mike Pence cast the tie-breaking vote Tuesday night. It was a major victory for Wall Street. The rule, developed by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, would have allowed people to file class action lawsuits that could have cost the banks billions of dollars. In media news, the Federal Communications Commission has voted to eliminate a decades-old rule that ensures community residents can have say in their local broadcast station. The regulation, known as the Main Studio Rule, requires broadcasters to have a physical studio near where they have a license to transmit. Opponents say the elimination of the rule will accelerate the consolidation of the media industry, allowing massive corporate media companies such as the right-wing Sinclair Broadcast Group to buy up and control even more local stations. A number of prominent fashion magazines and companies have announced they will no longer work with photographer Terry Richardson following nearly 2 decades of accusations of sexual harassment. Richardson is one of the most prominent photographers in the world. He's photographed everyone from former President Barack Obama to model Kate Moss. He's long faced accusations that he coerces young women into exploitive positions and sexually harasses them during photo shoots. His blacklisting comes after dozens of women came forward to accuse now disgraced movie mogul Harvey Weinstein of sexual harassment, assault, and rape. In the Philippines, community radio journalist Christopher Ibanlazada was murdered by gunmen Tuesday night in the city of Bislig in the southern region of Mindanao. Lazada had received multiple death threats leading up to his murder. The Philippines is one of the deadliest countries in the world for journalists. Back in the United States, a third of U.S. service members say they consider white nationalists to be a greater threat to U.S. security than the conflicts in Iraq, Afghanistan, or Syria. That's according to a new poll by the newspaper Military Times. The poll also shows 1 in 4 U.S. service members say they've seen displays of white nationalism by their fellow soldiers. A federal appeals court in Washington, D.C., has ruled an undocumented teenager detained in a refugee resettlement shelter in Texas does have the right to have an abortion. The ruling comes after the Trump administration tried to stop the pregnant 17-year-old from accessing an abortion. Her lawyer says the staff at the refugee shelter in Brownsville, Texas, forced the girl to call her abusive parents to tell them about her pregnancy, despite the fact that her parents allegedly beat the girl's older sister until she miscarried for getting pregnant out of wedlock. The lawyer also says the staff retaliated against the girl after learning about her plans to get an abortion, limiting her time with other kids at the shelter, and allegedly repeatedly asking her what she planned to name the baby. And football players on the Philadelphia Eagles traveled to Pennsylvania's capital to lobby for criminal justice reform Tuesday. The 3 players, Malcolm Jenkins, Chris Long, and Torrey Smith, lobbied for the passage of the Clean Slate Act, which would seal criminal records for nonviolent misdemeanors after 10 years, making it easier for people to get jobs and housing. Malcolm Jenkins' brother was convicted of marijuana possession while still a teenager, a conviction that continues to make it difficult for him to find jobs. Torrey Smith's mother also had trouble finding well-paying jobs after she was convicted of a felony stemming from her abusive relationship with her ex-husband. She was later pardoned by then Virginia Governor Mark Warner. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, DemocracyNow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Juan Gonzalez. Welcome to all of our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world. As President Donald Trump refuses to back down from attacks on the widow of a U.S. soldier killed in Niger, today we spend the hour with one of the country's best-known Gold Star family members, whose son was killed in Iraq, as investigations continue into a deadly October 4th ambush in which 5 soldiers from Niger and 4 U.S. soldiers were killed while on patrol. The widow of one of the men is speaking out against Trump's handling of the aftermath of the attack. The widow of U.S. Army Sergeant LaDavid Johnson said during a condolence call the president couldn't remember the name of her husband. In an interview with ABC's Good Morning America, Maisha Johnson said she also heard President Trump say, quote, he knew what he signed up for, but it hurts anyway.
What he said was...
The president?
Yes, the president said that he knew what he signed up for, but it hurts anyways. And it made me cry because I was very angry at the tone of his voice and how he said it. Like he couldn't remember my husband's name. The only way he remembered my husband's name because he told me he had my husband report in front of him. And that's when he actually said LaDavid.
The week before, Trump falsely claimed his predecessors didn't call the families of fallen soldiers. Last Thursday, White House Chief of Staff John Kelly, a former Marine Corps general and a Gold Star father himself, defended Donald Trump and doubled down on his criticism of Florida Congress member Frederica Wilson, who is a close friend of the Johnson family and was in the car when Trump made the call. She later told reporters what he said. Both the Congresswoman and the widow are African American. This is Kelly.
He knew what he was getting himself into because he enlisted. There's no reason to enlist. He enlisted. And he was where he wanted to be exactly where he wanted to be with exactly the people he wanted to be with when his life was taken. That was the message. That was the message that was transmitted. It stuns me that a member of Congress would have listened in on that conversation. Absolutely stuns me. And I thought at least that was sacred. You know, when I was a kid growing up, a lot of things were sacred in our country. Women were sacred and looked upon with great honor. That's obviously not the case anymore, as we see from recent cases. Life, the dignity of life, was sacred. That's gone. Religion, that seems to be gone as well. Gold Star families, I think that left in the convention over the summer. But I just thought the selfless devotion that brings a man or woman to die on the battlefield, I just thought that that might be sacred.
Well, the convention over the summer that General Kelly refers to is likely last year's Democratic National Convention, where one of the defining moments of the presidential campaign took place. That's when Gold Star father, Khizr Khan, joined by his wife, Ghazala, spoke about his son, Captain Humayun Khan, who was killed in 2004 by a suicide bomber in Iraq. The Army posthumously awarded Captain Khan a Bronze Star and a Purple Heart. He was the highest-ranking Pakistani-American to die in Iraq and was buried in Arlington National Cemetery with full military honors. During Khizr Khan's speech, he criticized Trump's call to ban Muslims from entering the United States and famously pulled a copy of the Constitution from his pocket, held it up for all to see, and offered to lend it to then-Republican candidate Donald Trump.
Like many immigrants, we came to this country empty-handed. We believed in American democracy, that with hard work and goodness of this country, we could share in and contribute to its blessings. We are blessed to raise our 3 sons in a nation where they were free to be themselves and follow their dreams. Our son, Humayun, had dreams too of being a military lawyer, but he put those dreams aside the day he sacrificed his life to save the lives of his fellow soldiers. Hillary Clinton was right when she called my son the best of America. If it was up to Donald Trump, he never would have been in America. Donald Trump consistently smears the character of Muslims. He disrespects other minorities, women, judges, even his own party leadership. He vows to build walls and ban us from this country. Donald Trump, you're asking Americans to trust you with their future. Let me ask you, have you even read the United States Constitution? I will gladly lend you my copy. In this document, look for the words liberty and equal protection of law. Have you ever been to Arlington Cemetery? Go look at the graves of brave patriots who died defending United States of America. You will see all faiths, genders, and ethnicities. You have sacrificed nothing and no one.
That was Khizr Khan speaking at the 2016 Democratic National Convention. He joins us in studio for the hour. This is Democracy Now! We'll be back with him in a minute.
I've been waiting for something to happen for a week or a month or a year, with the blood and the ink of the headline and the sound of the crowd in my ear. You might ask what it takes to remember when you think that you've heard it before. How governments lie to their people and how nations are driven to war. There are shadows on the faces of the men who fan the flame. To those wars that are fought in places we can't even remember their name. On the radio, talk shows, and TV, you hear one thing again and again. How the USA stands for freedom and how we come to the aid of a friend. Well, who are these ones we call our friend? These governments killing their own? Or is it the ones who can't take anymore? So they pick up a brick or a gun or a stone. There are lives in the balance.
Lives in the Balance, written by Jackson Browne, performed by the late Richie Havens. This is Democracy Now!, DemocracyNow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez.
Today we spend the hour with Khizr Khan, whose new memoir is just out this week, titled An American Family, a Memoir of Hope and Sacrifice. Khizr Khan and his wife Ghazala are Gold Star parents whose son, Captain Humayun Khan, was killed in 2004 by a suicide bomber in Iraq. The Army posthumously awarded Captain Khan a Bronze Star and a Purple Heart. He was the highest-ranking Pakistani-American to die in Iraq and was buried in Arlington National Cemetery with full military honors.
Khizr Khan, of course, spoke at the 2016 Democratic National Convention in honor of his son. During his speech, as you just heard in our last segment, he criticized Donald Trump's call to ban Muslims from entering the U.S. and famously offered to loan the Republican candidate, Donald Trump, his pocket copy of the U.S. Constitution. Khizr Khan, I wanted to start with, well, first welcome you to Democracy Now! And asking you about this controversy in Niger. You have 4 special forces who are killed in Niger. And you then have a condolence call that President Trump made to the widow of LaDavid Johnson, one of the sergeants who was killed. The call made in the car on a speakerphone, and her dear friend, mentor for LaDavid Johnson, now Congresswoman Frederica Wilson, was in the car. When they got out of the car to meet the body of LaDavid Johnson, press were there, and Frederica Wilson said what President Trump had said to the widow that made her cry. And I'm wondering your thoughts on the morning of the funeral of LaDavid Johnson. President Trump did not mention LaDavid Johnson in his tweets, but went after the Congress member. Both the widow and the Congress member, Frederica Wilson, are African American.
First, those 4 brave heroes, my sons, brave heroes. They were under most difficult circumstances protecting my nation, to making sure that we enjoy peace in this nation. Their sacrifice, their families deserve utmost dignity, respect, and privacy. This call could have waited few days till after the burial. Or, and that is where John Kelly, we pay tribute to his military service, his family's sacrifice, but now he serves in people's house. He is on people's payroll. His responsibility is to make sure that this president, who lacks empathy, who lacks sympathy, leadership, is directed to act with dignity, directed to act about this moment with utmost respect to these families. This is what he should have done. He knows the lack of this president. He is inarticulate. He should have put the exact words in front of him to recite from there. That's one thing. Second, it was his responsibility, John Kelly's responsibility, to make sure that the family that is being called is at peaceful place. It's not, normally these calls do not take place without protocol. The White House would call, where are you? President is calling, could you take the call? I hope that was done. If that was done, that was also botched, that this family is in the car and this call is being made. They deserved most privacy, most encouragement, most support from this nation. That was not done. I don't know why John Kelly should stay on public's payroll if he's going to be providing this kind of leadership. This is tradition of this nation. This military service is honored when military officers, when military personnel retires. They go home with dignity and honor and collect their pension. But if they step back in political life, they must provide the leadership for which they have been trained. That was not done. John Kelly stood with the most bigoted president in support of him, disrespecting this family. That is what my disappointment is from John Kelly. So I honor their sacrifice. These Gold Star families are the most honorable, respected, and dignified families of this nation. And I pay my tribute to them, their sacrifice.
And I wanted to ask you, obviously, when you made your speech at the Democratic National Convention, candidate Trump then responded to your statements. And I'm wondering now this sort of inability of either candidate Trump or President Trump to really develop clear empathy with Gold Star families. Your reaction to how President Trump responded to you?
My wife, Ghazala, said it so right, that this president doesn't know what sympathy, what empathy is. He's void of that. He's void of the basic character of a leader is to empathize the people that he wishes to govern, that he wishes to lead. So that has become evident. Making up stories, making up facts. Political expediency is the hallmark of this White House, including the president. Any situation, any moment where restraint is the order, that should have been the advice of John Kelly to President, restraint. But they indulged in political expediency. How could we exploit this moment of utmost dignity and grief of these families to their advantage? And that is what was done. In our case, exactly same thing, regardless of who they were maligning at that time, a Gold Star mother. That moment was also a moment of restraint, but he did not.
Well, let's go to the comment of, well, then candidate Donald Trump after you, standing next to your wife, Ghazala, spoke at the Democratic National Convention.
I saw him. He was, very emotional and probably looked like a nice guy to me. His wife, if you look at his wife, she was standing there. She had nothing to say. Maybe she wasn't allowed to have anything to say. You tell me, but plenty of people have written that.
Later, Ghazala Khan responded to Trump in the Washington Post, writing, quote, Donald Trump has asked why I did not speak at the Democratic Convention. He said he would like to hear from me. Here is my answer to Donald Trump, because without saying a thing, all the world, all America felt my pain. I am a Gold Star mother. Whoever saw me felt me in their heart. The last time I spoke to my son was Mother's Day 2004. We'd asked him to call us collect whenever he could. I begged him to be safe. I asked him to stay back and not to go running around trying to become a hero, because I knew he would do something like that. He said, Mom, these are my soldiers. These are my people. I have to take care of them. He was killed by a car bomber outside the gates of his base. He died trying to save his soldiers and innocent civilians. Talk more, Khizr Khan, about this attack on your wife and what has come of it since the man who attacked her and you became President of the United States?
Well, this nation is witnessing the maligning of the dignity of the office of the presidency. These traits that we are witnessing, we witnessed as candidate Trump, and now we are witnessing as President Trump. There are some characters, and the reason I narrate this is, and I have listed that in my experience, having lived twice under martial law, under dictatorships, under those who are anti-democratic values, twice in my life, once in school, second time when I was in law school. This is what they do, and you connect the dots.
You grew up in Pakistan.
In Pakistan. And I narrate that story in the book in amazing detail. They go against the press. That is the history of all autocratic, all dictators. They go against the press, they malign them. I witnessed with my own eyes burning of the press because they printed something critical of the general, of the military leader, of the dictator. Second thing they do, people's representative in the assemblies are no good. They ought to be thrown out. Only my people will govern the country. They malign the people's representative assemblies. Look what is taking place in the United States today by this president. Then they go after the rule of law. These judges are no good. I will appoint the judges. You connect the dots. Our democracy is under attack, not only from outside, but from inside. I was witness to when Soviet Union disintegrated, and I tell that story in our book in detail, that they have not forgotten the grudge. America, rightly so, because I was witness to it, rightly so, America supported the disintegration of Soviet Union. So the attack from outside and this divisive president, divisive White House, this is a collection of incompetence. John Kelly was Secretary of Homeland, implementing, supporting the illegal, unconstitutional executive orders of this president, which are in the courts. I stood then with the goodness of America. I stand now. I have submitted 2 briefs. First in the Ninth Circuit against the executive orders, and one in the Supreme Court against the executive orders banning Muslims and all of this. This incompetency is so visible now, not only to us, but look what is taking place in these couple of weeks. The Republican leadership, the moderate, the most honorable members of our elected officials are separating from this president and his policies. So this is what happened. That candidate became president, and look, we are at the direction of this country is as if there is no direction. We are going every which way, everywhere.
I wanted to ask you, in your book, you talk about your first exposure to American principles of democracy. You were in a market in Lahore, and you came across an old beat-up copy of the U.S. Constitution. And could you talk about that and how that affected your viewpoint, and then eventually resulted in your family immigrating to the United States in 1980?
We tell that story in our book, but by the way, the purpose of writing this book was to not only tell this story, but to support a scholarship which is funded from the proceeds of this book at University of Virginia under the name of Captain Humayun Khan Scholarship Fund. So that's a side issue. But I was 22 years old. I was in second year of law school. I had taken a course, comparative studies of the world constitution. 4 constitutions were included in that course. Constitution of Soviet Union, yes, Soviet Union, which is Russia now. Germany, Magna Carta foundation of the British system, and Constitution of United States. So I got the materials, and the very first document sitting on top of these materials, titled Declaration of Independence. I casually looked at it, placed the materials on the side of my dorm room metal desk in Lahore. I said, Declaration of Independence. Independence is gained, given, bestowed. You struggle for, so your colonist feels mercy and said, I had enough of this nation, we will grant them independence. But what are those people that declare their independence? Wow. It took I'm still, even today, I am in awe of that sentiment, what I had when I looked at the word Declaration of Independence. I continued to read it, and all 1,338 words in one standing. I remember very clearly, I took my shoes off because my feet were hurting. I was standing and reading. It's a little difficult English for me. I was trying to understand all of it. Amazing awe, and I still remain in awe of it. I did not do too well in that course because I was so focused on these three documents, because next one was articles, and thereafter were the Bill of Rights. It all made so much sense, and that is the story that we tell, and through these two books we are trying to present it to America, I am, as a grateful citizen of this, most humble, modest, and grateful citizen, I'm trying to present to my nation is that these values, these principles are worth standing for. And I pay tribute to Democracy Now! And your effort, Voice of Democracy. Democracy was amazingly expanded throughout last century. Smaller nation, rest of the world, saw the dignity in democracy, and they were incorporating these principles. Those who do not like democracy, meaning authoritarian mentality, meaning the mentality like Donald Trump, mentality like Putin and others, decided to attack democracy. Our values of human dignity, what is our election system? It's equal dignity for all, that when we go to vote, nobody says you're better, you're less, we are all equal.
So, Khizr Khan, how did you end up coming to the country and getting your citizenship the same year as your son got his citizenship?
Yeah. I was a person of modest mean with that love of these documents in heart. I could only dream at that time when I was 22, when I read the Declaration of Independence, that maybe one day I'll go and see what kind of people are these that declared their independence. And then I read the articles, that is rule of law. Then I read the Declaration, the Constitution, the amendments, the Bill of Rights. These are human dignities. Every human being that is on this planet Earth aspires to have those dignities and freedoms. Wow, these are written, these are part of principles of this nation. So I had that dream, but I had no means to come here. I went to Dubai to work so that I could gather enough funds, and I had amazing interaction with Americans that I'll explain.
You worked for an oil company there for a time,
For an
right?
oil company, and we tell this whole journey in this book. Amazing interaction. I was in Dubai. I had slept. I had rented a room, bare room, no window, just 4 walls and a roof from a cab driver because I couldn't afford. I went there empty-handed, empty pocket. From this cabbie for 2 days because I was to report for duty on Monday. So I go to work for Monday, and my first interaction with America is taking place now. I entered the office of that oil company, and my boss comes, and we go to his office, and he's explaining piles of files and what my work is going to be and all that. And he looks at me second time. He said, "Khizr, you look tired. Where have you been sleeping? Where have you been staying?" I didn't tell him, but I told him that I have rented a room and all that. What was taking place that for 2 days I was sleeping on the floor with my suitcase, my pillow, and my towel as my bed sheet. 2 nights. And I tell that story to honor my readers and to honor our audience, to tell that all of that difficulty was worth coming to this nation. He looks at me, he said, picks up his phone and calls somebody, and within 30 minutes, his blessed wife is there. And he says to me, he said, Keyser, let's go. And I said, where are we going? He said, we want you to go your home. And I was just taken aback that, what home? I don't have a home. I just have a room and a floor and 4 walls and my towel. So they took me to a fully furnished 1-bedroom apartment. And we walked in. I was awe-stricken at the generosity of these people, 2 of them. It had everything that a person would need: towels, bed sheets. I have never seen so many pillows on the bed ever in my life. Spoons, forks, plates. And then she opened the fridge. She said, there's some bread and butter and jam for you to eat and all that. And we will see you tomorrow. Please rest. I remain so humbled, so grateful for that moment, that even today, after so many years with having so many blessings in life and all that, that very moment from seeing the generosity of America, this person became symbol of America for me.
I wanted to ask you, when eventually you come to the United States, you end up at Harvard Law School, and your impression of your classmates at Harvard was not as in the same vein as those first Americans you met. And you write in your book, I was a child of the proletariat, of post-colonialism, of people who had to work in order to eat, who understood viscerally that the rich and powerful lived differently from the rest of us because I had suffered their edicts and whims. And a lot of the people with you at Harvard Law School were from that elite of America.
They sat next to me, brother of a president of a country. I explained that experience detail-wise in the book. It was amazingly dignified class and classmates and all that, but I was there, but I wasn't there. So I became known to the professors and to my classmates as a socialist voice, because I always spoke against the exploitation of poor nations. And from my perspective, wherever, and really that is what is at the spirit of America. And somehow that is why this connection is so strong today, is stronger than ever before in support of my nation, standing for these values, is fairness. This nation is embodiment of fairness, fairness of human beings, fairness of each other. And that is the story that we try to tell. And that is the hope that we carry with us. I've been to 162 communities thus far. And people are afraid because of the circumstances, because of the direction our country has taken. And these communities are worried. These are faith communities, immigrant communities, political organizations, social and other organizations. But out of that fear comes hope. Their faith in our Constitution, in our principles. And that hope will solve our problem. We just celebrated 230 years of our blessed Constitution. We will continue. This Constitution will prevail. Its values will prevail. And that is the story that is, we have, there is something secret that we don't, it's not so obvious when you look at the book, but there is a message. Right. First page and the last page has a message of this book, that conveys our intention, how we wish to present this book.
I wanted to follow up with a question about your speech at the Democratic Convention. You almost didn't make it. You were invited to make the speech, but you asked all your friends, and they told you don't do it.
Yes.
You're going to become a political pawn.
Yes.
But then you received a letter from a young girl that really changed your mind. Could you talk about that?
We were told in December. We heard the bigoted statement, I'll ban all Muslims and Hispanics are criminal, will be thrown out of here, and judges are partial and women are of not equal dignity. So wherever we would go, small kids, we live in Charlottesville, Virginia, by the way, would come to us knowing that I am a practicing lawyer. Their parents will bring. These are elementary school, middle school kids. They come to me and they say, is this true? Will we be thrown out of here? And I would hearten them that, no, look, read the Constitution. Here is the 14th Amendment. Here is Section 1. We are all granted equal protection, equal dignity. But kids would not be heartened. And they would remain worried, don't want to go to school, we are bullied at a school and all that. So that was happening this way. Then in January, we received the call that there is a tribute that DNC wishes to pay. And they had invited other Gold Star families, and the tribute is being paid to them as well. And Captain Humayun Khan is one of them. So we agreed that that is fine. A few days after that, we saw the tribute. It was wonderful, and that is what the tribute was played during the convention. Then came the invitation that we are inviting other Gold Star families to come at the time of tribute. Would you like to come? Something told me that this is not, I'm not a political person, but I have some sense that such events could get out of hand. So I asked our other sons, they told us, do not go. This is not your cup of tea. You are not made for these things. These are totally, totally out of your league. We called some other, we thought that they're being protective of us, our sons, our friends, some little more politically aware friends, and they told us exactly the same thing, that we know your nature, you're humble, modest, peaceful people, stay out of it, do not go. And then came the letter that you mentioned. I went to check. So we asked for 2 days. We almost decided, sitting in the room with Ghazala, we would talk, we would look at Captain Humayun Khan's picture, and we would try to seek some guidance, some hint from somewhere. And we almost decided that this is second day, this afternoon I'll call and tell them that, thank you, we are not coming. So I go to the mailbox, check the mail, and there is a card in an envelope, name of the school on top, it's a middle school, and then 4 names of the students of the 5th grade. And this is the line that sent us there, that keeps us moving even today. Line said, Mr. and Mrs. Khan, please make sure Maria is not thrown out of this country. She's our friend. We love her. I read it twice standing there, because inside for 2 days we had been praying some guidance. We are people of faith. We believe in divine guidance and divine wisdom. I read it twice, and I walked a little faster, went up in the home, at home in our living room, and I told Ghazala, I showed her. She read it and she looked at me and she said, we will go. And we went.
We're going to break, and when we come back, we want to talk with you about President Trump's approach to immigrants and the Muslim ban, and also your son fighting in Iraq. Khizr Khan is our guest. His memoir out this week. It's called An American Family, a memoir of hope and sacrifice. And he has a second book for young people, This Is Our Constitution, Discover America with a Gold Star Father. Stay with us. piano and bells and sax by Stefan Christoff and Ros Moshe performing at Alwan for the Arts here in New York City. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez, our guest, Gold Star father Khizr Khan for the hour. His son killed in action in Iraq in 2004. In your book, Khizr Khan, An American Family, you write, "You know I'm against the war," I told Humayun. He creased his mouth into a tight smile and nodded, "I know." What are your thoughts about the Iraq War?
This is nothing new, this is nothing secret. I had been against that. There's a reason for that. I know some history of that part of the world, centuries-old history, the conflicts that have existed there. For my nation, for my country to get involved in that, I was with the people that had disagreed with that. There was no American interest to be served there. That war had not served, we are proven right, American interest. We could foresee that involvement in that part of the world with American blood and treasure will be a mistake. I was vocal about it at home, outside. I remain vocal about that. So I shared that with Humayun, and he knew that, because he used to hear us speak that this is not going to serve our nation and its interest. But here it was, and his response was, to me, he called Baba, which is equivalent to father. And he said, "Baba, you know that I'm a military officer. I am going there to protect my men and women. I am responsible for them, and I don't think on the political line. That is Washington's decision. We, members of the armed forces, serve and obey the orders that are given to us by our seniors. And my task, I see it, is to protect, and that's why I'm going there."
I was wondering your thoughts back in 2004 when, I think it was the White House Correspondents' Dinner, President Bush, he made that video joking about the failure of the U.S. to find weapons of mass destruction. This is what he said as he narrated a slideshow of pictures from the White House showing himself looking under a piece of furniture. This is a clip of Bush's joke.
Those weapons of mass destruction got to be somewhere. Nope, no weapons over there. Maybe under here.
That was President Bush a few months before your son was killed.
Yes. I could not see it now, or don't want to hear it. Look at the cost. Look at the cost of that mistake. I go to Arlington Cemetery. I not only stand at the grave of Captain Humayun Khan, then I come out and I stand at the corner where I can see all of my young heroes, my sons and daughters, in Section 60. That's where most of this country's best are buried because of that mistake. I didn't want to see it. I don't want to hear it. Such mistakes should not be made. More deliberation, more thoughtfulness before sending my best of my country to these missions and these trying to stop terrorism. The menace of terrorism must be defeated and all, but that was a mistake. And I'm not saying just because Captain Humayun Khan died there. I'm speaking on behalf of those almost 5,000 men and women that are in Section 60, where I go quite often to reflect.
People may not remember that your famous speech at the convention was really about the Muslim ban. Now, Donald Trump wasn't president then, but soon after he became president, he instituted one and then another and another, most recently struck down just in the last weeks. Your thoughts on this? I understand that you were supposed to give a speech just a few months ago in, where was it? In
Canada.
Canada. And is it true that the Toronto organizers had to cancel the event because you were reportedly told your travel privileges are being reviewed? You've been a citizen for more than 30 years of this country.
Yes. What was taking place then, which has been streamlined now, that Muslims, whenever they would travel back to United States after traveling, DHS was asking password to review their laptop and their telephones. So you refuse, you say, I'm a citizen, I'm not going to give you my password so you can see my telephone and search my telephone or my laptop. They would ask you to wait, and it'll be hours and hours and hours. And there are some lawsuits that were filed at that time. I was advised that it is not prudent at this moment up until this glitch is cleared. Lots of Muslims are facing this difficulty at the airports, and you are possible target for that. And so I refrained. That is what caused me. But since then, I have traveled to England, I have traveled to Europe, and I was concerned. I was, in my heart, when I was standing in the line to check back in, I had called home before leaving that please keep an eye on my arrival, because that was my concern, and for that purpose, but there was no difficulty afterwards.
I'm wondering, given your your electrifying presentation at the Democratic Convention and your reaction to the election of President Trump and to the fact that a significant portion of the Republican Party base, no matter what he has done, continue to loyally support him, and how do you assess that?
Of course, I was heartbroken, very sad. Could not comprehend how this could happen, But now, as we are looking into the details of it, this foreign intervention had been an element in Donald Trump's victory. I trust, and this nation trusts, the statements of this nation's most prominent security advisors, national security advisors, that have given a statement telling that, yes, there had been a foreign hand in destabilizing our democracy, our electoral system. And that is what they were aiming to create division, and the division within. And look what has happened. And as I mentioned, I come from Charlottesville, Virginia. I witnessed with my own eyes that march on August 12, Friday night, that took place. I was there in the traffic, stuck. I was standing outside, but out of fear, I sat down in my car. I saw rifles and multiple guns. And the worst thing I saw was Nazi flag on the streets of United States, of blessed city of Charlottesville.
We're going to continue this discussion and post it as part 2 at DemocracyNow.org. Our guest has been Khizr Khan. His new memoir is just out. It's called An American Family, a memoir of hope and sacrifice. And he has a young people's book, This Is Our Constitution, Discover America with a Gold Star Father. We'll post part 2 at DemocracyNow.org. Thank you.